The sound came before anything else, an uneven crunching of dry leaves, like someone dragging their feet across the backyard. Daniel wiped the sweat from his forehead and stepped out of the small tool shed behind the old school building. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon, one of the few shifts where he could work in peace without rushing to pick up his son Sam or dealing with a broken toilet. But the noise was growing louder. He tightened his grip on the broom handle, not because it was a weapon but because it was the only thing he had. A woman's voice cut sharply through the air. "What are you doing in my yard?" Daniel turned so fast he almost tripped over an abandoned rake. She stood at the fence line, a young woman in jeans, hair pulled up in a messy knot, holding her phone like she was ready to call the police with one tap. Her eyes were narrowed, suspicious, guarded. Daniel knew that look. He'd seen it 1,000 times, usually when someone realized the janitor wasn't supposed to be somewhere important. "This isn't your yard," Daniel said, confused, pointing at the cracked pavement beneath his boots. "This is school property." She stepped closer, shaking her head. "The school ends behind the cafeteria. This is part of my property line." She gestured at the trees behind him. Daniel blinked. He knew these grounds better than anyone. He had spent nights fixing pipes here, mornings clearing snow, whole weekends repairing things no one else bothered to notice. But this woman spoke with certainty, almost fear. Before he could answer, another sound rumbled from behind the shed. Not leaves this time, something heavier. Something moving slowly but steadily. Daniel stiffened. The woman noticed instantly. Her expression shifted from anger to worry. What was that? Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead he took a step back until he was aligned with her line of sight. Then he quietly pointed behind him and said, "To stop what's coming." Her breath hitched. "What do you mean what's coming?" Daniel swallowed, his mind racing. For weeks he had seen strange tracks in the dirt, deep and spaced unevenly, like something dragging itself. He had heard growls he couldn't place, and once he even found the cafeteria dumpster bent inward like metal foil. He had reported it all. The security guard laughed it off. The principal told him he was overworked. But now, hearing the low rumble growing louder, he knew he hadn't imagined any of it. The woman's eyes widened as the leaves behind the shed burst apart. A large shadow moved, big enough that Daniel instinctively stepped in front of her. She gasped, stumbling back a little, but he held out his hand to keep her steady. The creature, or whatever it was, finally emerged enough for them to see its outline. It wasn't an animal he recognized. Too tall, too dark, its movements were slow but deliberate, like it was searching for something. "Stay behind me," Daniel whispered. She shook her head nervously. "You're a janitor. What are you going to do?" "Try to keep you alive," he said simply. The creature sniffed the air, its head tilting slightly, as though it had finally sensed them. Daniel felt a chill run through him. He didn't know what it wanted, but he knew one thing: it had been getting closer every day. Someone had to stop it. Someone had to protect the kids who played here, the teachers who walked home late, even strangers who wandered onto the property. "What do we do?" the woman whispered. Daniel slowly backed them up toward the fence, eyes locked on the creature. "We run, now." They turned at the same time, sprinting across the grass as the ground behind them shook. The woman's breath came out in panicked bursts, but Daniel kept her moving. For the first time, she understood. He wasn't trespassing. He wasn't the danger. He was the warning. Daniel didn't stop running until they reached the narrow alley between her backyard fence and the old brick wall of the school. The woman clutched her side, bent over and gasping for air, but Daniel stayed alert, eyes fixed on the tree line they had escaped from. The creature had vanished again, melting into the shadows as if it had never existed. That was worse. If it chased them out into the open, he could deal with it. But when it disappeared, it meant it was watching, picking its moment. The woman finally managed to speak through her breathing. What was that thing? And why is it on my land?" Daniel leaned against the wall, trying to steady his own shaking hands. "I wish I knew. I've seen signs for weeks. Heard it at night, but today is the first time it came this close to someone." Her expression softened just enough to show she wasn't angry anymore, now she was scared. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Daniel laughed under his breath, not because it was funny but because it was the only reaction he had left. "I did. The school thinks I'm a janitor with stress issues. They don't listen to people like me. They listen to titles, not warnings." She opened her mouth to respond, but a sudden metallic clang echoed from the distance. They both jerked their heads toward the sound. The dumpster behind the cafeteria shook violently for a second, then fell still. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It followed us. Daniel clenched his jaw. It's been tracking the school for days. Whatever it wants, it's still searching for it. She looked at him carefully for a long moment before asking, "What's your name?" "Daniel. I'm Claire," she said quietly. He nodded but kept his eyes on the pathway. The school bell rang faintly from the front building, and Claire flinched at the sound. Daniel's heart skipped. Sam, he breathed. His son would be crossing the schoolyard right now, heading toward the pickup gate. If the creature had moved closer to the cafeteria, it was dangerously near the walkway students used. Without thinking, Daniel started running again, sprinting toward the side path leading to the main building. Claire shouted after him, but he didn't slow down. Every instinct in him screamed that he was already too late. Sam was all he had left in the world, his whole reason for waking up, working double shifts, taking on jobs no one else wanted. The thought of that creature being anywhere near his boy made his chest tighten painfully. As he rounded the corner, he saw a crowd of kids filtered out onto the sidewalk, laughing, pushing, calling out to their parents. His eyes darted rapidly through the faces until he spotted Sam near the gate, backpack slung over one shoulder, waiting with that patient little smile he always had. Relief washed over Daniel, but then he saw it. In the reflection of the cafeteria's long window behind the students, a shadow too tall to belong to anything human, gliding silently along the edge of the building. Daniel's voice tore out of him before he could think. "Sam, move away from the wall." Sam blinked in confusion, startled by the sudden shout. Other kids turned too, following Daniel's trembling finger as he pointed. Claire ran up beside him, breathless. The shadow paused, as if noticing the sudden shift in attention. Then, with chilling smoothness, it ascended the wall like something boneless. Screams erupted across the walkway. Teachers rushed forward, herding children away, but the creature didn't attack. It hovered, studying the crowd as if trying to identify a single child among many. Sam dropped his backpack and stumbled backward, eyes wide in terror. Daniel shoved through the chaos, grabbing his son and pulling him close. Claire helped drag them behind a row of parked cars. The creature's form blurred, then retreated, disappearing over the rooftop. Parents shouted, alarms blared, and the school staff stared in disbelief, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. But Daniel knew, it hadn't come by accident. It was looking for something, or someone, and this time, it had gotten close enough to choose its target. Sam was shaking violently against his chest, and Daniel held him tighter as Claire whispered, trembling, "Daniel, why did it look directly at your son?" And Daniel, with dread settling like ice inside him, realized he had no answer. Not yet. The school went into an instant lockdown, alarms piercing the air as teachers rushed the children inside. But Daniel didn't move. He stood frozen beside the row of parked cars, holding Sam so tightly the boy could barely breathe. Claire hovered beside them, glancing between the rooftop and Daniel's face, waiting for him to say something that made sense of what they had just seen. But nothing made sense anymore. The creature had singled out Sam. Out of hundreds of children, its attention had locked onto his son like it recognized him. That truth weighed on Daniel like a crushing boulder. An administrator ran over, demanding explanations, but Daniel stepped around her, guiding Sam and Claire away from the crowd. He didn't trust the school to handle this. They hadn't listened before, they wouldn't listen now. Sam trembled in his grip, burying his face in Daniel's shirt. "Dad, what was that? Why was it looking at me?" Daniel knelt, cupping his son's cheeks gently. "You're safe. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." But his own voice shook. Sam noticed, and that frightened him even more. Claire knelt too, brushing Sam's hair from his forehead with surprising tenderness. "You're okay. We're both with you." Her presence steadied Daniel more than he expected. The three of them walked toward Claire's house, the closest safe place they had. When they entered her backyard, Claire locked the gate, the doors, even dragged a chair under the handle like she was bracing for a storm. Sam sat on the couch clutching a pillow, his wide eyes fixed on the windows. Daniel paced the room, his mind raced, unraveling memories he hadn't touched in years, days when Sam was a baby, nights when strange noises came from outside their old apartment, moments when he'd feel watched but convince himself it was exhaustion. "It's not random," Daniel whispered, more to himself than to Claire. "It came too close, too deliberate." Claire folded her arms tightly. "Daniel, you need to tell me everything. Every detail you've noticed." You said you've been seeing signs for weeks. He stopped pacing. It wasn't just weeks. Claire blinked. What do you mean? Daniel sat heavily on a chair. It started when Sam was born. She stared at him, waiting. Daniel exhaled shakily. Back then, I kept finding scratches on the outside of our windows. Long ones. Not from cats. And when Sam was about 3, he would wake up screaming that something was tapping on the glass. I thought it was nightmares. I thought I was overtired. Claire's face drained of color. Daniel, that thing has been following you for years. The idea sounded insane even to him, but suddenly every memory fit together like pieces of a puzzle he had ignored. It's only gotten closer lately, he murmured. Sam, listening quietly, whispered, Dad, what does it want with me? Daniel's throat tightened. I don't know, but it's not taking you. Before Claire could speak, a sudden thud hit the roof. All 3 froze. Another thud followed, closer this time. Slowly, Daniel reached for Sam and pulled him behind him. The ceiling creaked as heavy steps moved across it, deliberate and slow, like the creature was studying the house from above. Claire covered her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. A faint scraping sound followed, nails, or claws, dragging across the shingles. Sam whimpered softly, and Daniel tightened his grip on him. They backed into the hallway, away from the windows. The creature's weight shifted again, pausing directly above where they stood. Daniel could almost feel it listening. And then, with a suddenness that made Claire scream, the thing leapt off the roof. The ground shook when it landed. Silence followed. Not safety, silence. The kind that meant it was still there, hiding, waiting. Daniel peered through the smallest gap in the curtain. At first he saw nothing. Then 2 glowing shapes appeared between the trees. Not eyes, markings on its chest, pulsing like an eerie heartbeat. Claire whispered, Daniel, it's signaling. Like it's calling to him. Sam clung to Daniel's leg, shaking. Why me? He sobbed. Daniel pulled him close, voice trembling with both fear and fury. Because you're the one thing in this world worth fighting for, he said. And I swear, whatever that thing wants, you're not giving it. Outside, the markings pulsed brighter, as though the creature had understood the promise, and accepted the challenge.